Most of you aren't subscribed. Make sure to subscribe, as it helps out the channel. Without further ado, the series opens near a village that notices a rift appearing from beneath the ground, uncovering an old man who claims to be the king of a former kingdom. The old man utters that his kingdom had been held captive by an evil magician, offering to hand over the kingdom to whoever defeats said magician, suddenly vanishing into dust. Moving forward in time, we follow several adventurers pitted against a mighty dragon, all working together to pick away at the dragon. But the adventurers begin dropping one by one, having lost valuable time and resources in the previous days. Laos Tudin, the leader, and our MC, is seen lost in thought, planning their next course of action after defeating the dragon. But suddenly Fallon, Laos's younger sister, shoves Laos away, helplessly watching as Fallon is snatched up by the red dragon. Scanning the area, Laos realizes his party has completely been wiped, watching as Fallon casts one final spell out of desperation, sending Laos and the entirety of the party back to the surface. Waking up in a field, Laos is called by Marcel Donato, notified that everyone had escaped the dungeon, all but Fallon herself. Laos is horrified to realize that her magic couldn't rescue her from the jaws of the dragon, asking for everyone to prepare to re-enter the dungeon, but Marcel reveals that everyone's gear had been lost when they were transported out of the dungeon. Chilchuck also joins the conversation, revealing that two of their party members have resigned, having been scouted by other parties. Laos knows exploring dungeons costs money to hire companions, buying equipment, and purchasing food, wondering if they could sell their current items to cover their expenses, but Chilchuck says they're nowhere near their goal. Laos knows that Fallon will get digested the longer they wait, saddened to hear revival spells won't work in every case, but first they should refuel with some food. Heading through town, Marcel and Chilchuck both begin listing off foods they crave, but Laos reminds them that they still need to save Fallon, suggesting that he solo the dungeon whilst the others sell their gear. Laos blames himself for not being more prepared, not wanting to put his friends in harm's way. But Marcel reminds Laos he needs her magic, and Chilchuck states they'll need his skills to open doors and disable traps. With Laos fired up, he declares that they'll quench their hunger by slaying the monsters within the dungeon, reminding everyone that there is an entire ecosystem of monsters in the dungeon, and this will surely give them chances to hunt for their own meals. As Marcel and Chilchuck think back on their monster encounters, they question if they'll survive after eating such creatures, telling Laos that criminals that have been banished are the ones that feed on monsters. But as Laos and Marcel continue to bicker, they suddenly spot a newbie party fleeing from a monster. With a single swing, Marcel knocks out the mushroom monster chasing them, watching as Laos appoint the mushroom monster as their first meal, learning from a book that mushrooms are a good beginner meal. Needing more ingredients, Laos rushes deeper into the dungeon, cutting over to a section of the dungeon that once was a cemetery for villagers to sleep, but now it has been turned into a marketplace for adventurers. Apparently, it was only 6 years ago when the dungeon emerged, and no one has any idea how it came to be, with people believing it to be forbidden magic that created the dungeon or monsters from another world flooding into their current one. Spotting a hole in the dungeon, Laos sticks his wrapped-up sword into the hole, luring out a scorpion only to put it down like a crayfish. Chilchuck calls out Laos for secretly wanting to eat monsters, but Laos adds he was always fascinated by how monsters looked and how they function, but it doesn't detract from his mission to save his sister. Retrieving some water from a nearby fountain, the gang set up in the middle of the room, prompting Laos to cut into the mushroom monster, amazed to learn that cutting the creature from the side is tougher than vertical cuts. Dicing up the mushroom, Laos tosses the mushroom cubes along with the scorpion into a boiling pot, reassuring Marcel that the scorpion's venom is safe to consume. Tasting the meal, Laos immediately throws up, spotting Senshi calling out to them. Taking over, Senshi begins dissecting the scorpion, removing its pincer, head and legs only to extract the scorpion's organs. As for the mushroom, Senshi removes the bottom half of the mushroom, keeping its top and legs, only to toss everything into a bigger pot he prepared himself. Seeing as the meal is missing things, Senshi heads over to sever some roots and herbs. But Marcel is very opposed to eating plants grown from a location that once belonged to a cemetery. With Marcel demanding to know who Senshi is, a strange ooze pours onto Marcel, revealed to be a slime that restricts Marcel from casting her spells with her voice. Luckily, Senshi frees Marcel with a single stab to the slime, surprising Leos as it would normally take them longer. Senshi reveals the structure of a slime is quite simplistic, as slimes choose their targets based on the prey's breathing pattern, meaning shouting would naturally draw its attention. Senshi begins prepping the slime with some citric juice, sandwiching it between a net, and declaring he'll let it dry into a delicacy in the coming weeks. Taking out one he prepared earlier, Senshi mentions how he studied the dungeon for over 10 years, tasting and adding the final touches to his delicious hot pot. As Senshi serves the boys a bowl, Marcel patiently watches the boys enjoying the dish, giving in as she demands to taste the dish as well. Surprisingly, the slime combined with the roots and herbs Senshi added completes the meal, all dusting off their bowls as Senshi introduces himself as a dwarf researcher. Upon hearing that Leos and his party are heading deep into the dungeon to rescue his sister from a red dragon, Senshi laments that dragons normally spend their days sleeping and slowly digesting their food, excitedly asking if he can join Leos's party, having always wanted to cook up a red dragon. Although the gang are surprised by Senshi's enthusiasm, they accept Senshi as a member, all leaving the first basement floor only to head into the second basement floor filled with massive trees and greenery. Apparently, scholars believe that the second basement floor belongs to the upper region of a golden castle, making Chilchik question how the massive trees remain underground, but Leos brushes it off as another feature of the cursed dungeon. Seeing Marcel trip, Leos reasons they should set up camp and rest for the day, reminded of the time when they spent the night in a hollow tree, all agreeing to hunt down monsters for their dinner. Seeing Marcel annoyed, Leos promises to make a meal that suits her taste, but Marcel freaks out hearing that only rats, bats, goblins, and living armor are the most popular monsters nearby. Luckily, Senshi reassures everyone that fruits also grow nearby, guiding everyone to some man-eating plants with fruits growing from them, annoying Marcel. Leos reminds Marcel that man-eating plants are an umbrella term, showing off the Baracelia flower lure in a mouse with its mucus trap, slaying it only to use it as compost. Leos states that all plants and vegetables are grown from dead remains and animal feces, reassured by Chilchuk that such man-eating plants at their level would never be able to harm humans. Seeing as it'll be hard for the gang to sneak in and retrieve the fruits growing off the man-eating plants, Marcel begins channeling a spell, preparing to fire it at the man-eating plants, but is suddenly halted by Senshi. At that moment, the plant opens its petals, sending several vines to ensnare Marcel, only for Senshi to remind Marcel to take only what they need, as Marcel's spell would have harmed the forest unnecessarily. As the vines begin wrapping tighter around Marcel, the gang spot the plant spitting out an existing corpse, scaring Marcel when she learns man-eating plants normally plant seeds in its victims. Seeing no other choice, Leos aims for the plant's roots, freeing Marcel. Helping Marcel up, Leos gets excited, wanting to know how Marcel felt being tied up by the plant, but Marcel glares at Leos, weirded out by his question. Picking some fruits and vegetables, the gang head into a hollow tree, starting off by boiling the plucked vegetables only to delicately remove their seeds. Next, Senshi coats a pan with the vegetable skin, making use of some fruit, excess slime, and scorpion remains to create a mixture that can be poured into the pan. Serving up a fruit tart, all once again amazed by the dish Senshi whipped up, but they all wonder what they should do with the corpse. With Marcel instructed to not revive it, they string it up for others to take note of it, heading off for the night. With Marcel enduring a nightmare as she sleeps, Leos thinks about the journey ahead, noting that eating food is a luxury only to those who survive. Following a younger Marcel, she greets her mother, who serves her some of her favorite dishes. But upon realizing they're all made from dungeon monsters, Marcel awakens, realizing it was a nightmare. Smelling something nearby, Marcel gets jealous seeing another party eating pork with bread, but Senshi points out beginner adventures prioritize eating breads, dried meats, and wine, but Senshi says adventurers need fats to help function. Seeing as Marcel herself is craving fatty foods, the gang agree to seek out eggs today, running into a creature with the body of a chicken, tale of a snake and venomous fangs and claws, widely known as the Basilisk King of Snakes. As Leos fantasizes about how a basilisk will taste, the gang search around for the basilisk's nest, uncovering some freshly laid eggs, surprising Marcel as they're quite soft and narrow. Suddenly, hearing the cry of the basilisk, Leos orders everyone to hide, watching as the party they saw from earlier also sneaking into the nest, but had brought the basilisk with them. As the creature tears through the beginners, it locks onto Marcel, who runs for her life, forcing Leos to intervene with a terrifying cry, purposely making himself look big and intimidating to halt the creature. With Senshi sneaking up from behind, the basilisk sends its snake head to deal with Senshi, whilst Leos occupies the chicken head, temporarily confusing the creature and ultimately allowing Senshi and Leos to slay the basilisk. Seeing one of the other party members poisoned, the gang agreed to make use of the antidote in their next meal, all rushing to skin the creature. Covering the creature with spices and stuffing it with vegetables, Senshi roasts the chicken's body, unveiling a nicely plump chicken roast. With the poison adventure fed some of the antidote-infused chicken, they all dust off the chicken. Sitting down to rest, the rookie adventurers mention how they've only started adventuring 3 months ago and have been wiped out in the same place countless times, asking Leos how they can improve, but Senshi cries that the rookies should focus on their diet, their sleep, and their workout routines. With the rookies inspired, they depart, allowing Leos and his party to descend further, worried that they won't reach the 3rd floor today. Leos says he heard the red dragon awakens every month to hunt, aiming to reach it before it awakens with an empty stomach, scaring Marcel as she falls on her butt. Seeing as Marcel needs to rest, Leos says they should choose a different path to avoid the roaming bats, prompting Marcel to offer to use her magic to clear a path. But Leos says Chilchuck can handle most of the traps they'll encounter. Needing more food before they continue, Senshi points out some mandrakes they can harvest, allowing Marcel to take charge as mandrakes are fundamental in magic and medicine. Since mandrakes will let out a loud noise when pulled from the earth, Marcel suggests they get a dog to unearth them, but realizes they have no access to such a creature. Leos suggests they use a long string to avoid hearing the mandrake's cries, but seeing everyone so conflicted, Senshi tugs on a mandrake, severing its head before its voice can be heard. Off to the side, Marcel feels pathetic since no one believes in her, choosing to prove that her method works as she opts to use a bat instead of a dog to unearth the mandrakes. Tying a long rope to a mandrake, Marcel dangles a loop in front of a bat's nest only to fire a spell to awaken the bats from their nest. As a swarm exits the nest, one gets caught by the rope, but even with the mandrake unearthed, the bat flies free, diving towards Marcel's location. With Leos and Chilchuck checking on Marcel, they notice Marcel is in complete shock, asking why Marcel did something so dangerous. Upon hearing Marcel didn't want to be a burden, Leos reminds Marcel that her magic is important in later levels, so he only wanted her to conserve her strength, asking Marcel to rely on others and not push herself. As Marcel snaps out of her daze, the gang are amazed by their food haul, watching as Senshi mixes ingredients from the basilisk, mandrakes, and bat, crafting a special omelet for the gang. Finally heading down some stairs, Chilchuck asks to borrow Leos's sword, smacking it against a wall only to reveal a hidden passage. Senshi is shocked to see Chilchuck so serious, all heading through the secret passage, but Chilchuck suddenly orders everyone to freeze, allowing Chilchuck to personally scout the area before them first. Having cleared up a path for everyone to follow, Senshi accidentally steps on a trap, freaking out Chilchuck as he orders Senshi to listen to him. Rebelling, Senshi triggers several more traps, getting screamed at by Chilchuck, who states fire traps will combust near oil traps. But hearing that there is oil nearby, Senshi says they'll have deep-fried food for their next meal. With Senshi agreeing to listen to Chilchuck agrees to lead Senshi to their oil source, all heading towards the treasure vault where Senshi spots a chest with an oil trap. As Chilchuck works his magic, he disarms the chest, wondering how he'll get the steaming hot oil out, but is asked by Senshi to let the oil rip into his pan. Letting the oil loose, Senshi catches the oil in his pan, evaluating the oil's temperature to be 180 degrees with his finger, only to ask Chilchuck to make use of the previous traps to help prepare their next meal. With Senshi prepping the meat and the batter, Senshi hands over the items to Chilchuck to cook over the fire trap, resulting in a nicely battered bat meat. As the gang sit down to enjoy the meal, Senshi admits that Chilchuck truly is a trap expert, convincing Chilchuck to teach Senshi some of his tricks in exchange for teaching him how to cook. Having made it through several more traps, Chilchuck helps the gang pass through another blocked-off passage, all feeling nostalgic having passed through the same area in the past. Leos suddenly realizes the decoration on his sword guard has disappeared, having acquired the memento 3 years ago when he was first a beginner. Having joined a gold-peeling crew, Fallon and Leos had followed their party into the second basement floor's castle, all horrified to see an adventurer's corpse had rotted away. With the other party members uncovering a room lined with pieces of armor, they all celebrate knowing they could sell the armor for a decent amount. But out of nowhere the armors move, picking off the adventurers. Choosing to flee, Leos attempts to carve a path to escape, but his sword is ultimately broken. Stealing his resolve, Leos had managed to snatch another armor sword, sadly losing his life and marking his first ever death, but was revived and had ever since carried the same sword on his adventures. As the gang re-explore their current location, they peek into a familiar room lined with living armors, all agreeing to keep battle to a minimum. Giving the signal, the gang rush through the hall, all watching as a stray armor steps out of line, forcing Senshi and Leos to dispatch it. Sadly, more armors begin to awaken, blocking off the gang's exit, forcing a retreat for now. Leos notes the armor's unusual pattern, seeing as the armors normally awaken when people move close to them, but today they seem to have preemptively moved to stop their movements, wondering where the puppet master could be hiding. With no one knowing what or where the puppet master could be, Leos suggests that 3 of them act as bait whilst one of them sneaks past the door, assigning Leos himself to sneak past them. Chilchuck does point out that living armors don't have eyes or ears, making Leos question the armor's movements a few minutes ago, but nonetheless the gang set their plan into action. Bursting through the room, the trio destroy as many armors as possible, allowing Leos to make his way through the room's massive doors, only to spot a single higher-tier living armor in the center of the room. Having never seen such a prestige-looking monster before, Leos reasons he can't ask for help, therefore he must immobilize the armor to buy some time. Sadly, Leos' strikes are easily blocked, kicked aside as he realizes he is outmatched. Seeing the armor thrust its blade, Leos defends for dear life, watching as his blade is shattered by the armor's superior sword. Seeing the armor marching towards him, Leos gets annoyed, tossing a piece of rubble at the armor's shield, but is surprised to see the armor block with its body, keeping its shield away from the piece of rubble. Upon a close inspection, Leos spots a strange cocoon attached to the back of the shield, suddenly remembering something from his childhood. Leos had once played with an egg case on a stick when he was younger, realizing that the armors are actually being controlled from within, explaining its human-like movement and orientations, and it seems the armors are all protecting the egg case. With the other 3 barely holding out, Leos racks his brain for a quick way to slay the creature hiding in the armor, ruling out a slime as the movement is too rigid along with any swarm of insect creatures as there is no buzzing sound. Having bought some time by hiding, Leos says he must confirm the creature first before slaying it, choosing to draw the armor's attention with a piece of rubble, only to tackle it from behind, forcing it to expose its body to protect its shield. Seeing an opening, Leos drags away its helmet, quickly hiding only to realize the helmet is empty. As the armor marches towards Leos, Leos fears it may be the end for him, but suddenly sees the armor swing its blade at a different pillar. Choosing to dig into the helmet's crevices, Leos draws out a mollusk to slay, only to toss its head back to the armor. With the armor busy putting back on its head, Leos once again tackles it, pinning it to the ground only to begin dismantling and carving out the other mollusk, heavily weakening the creature's control on the armor. Checking on the others, Leos sees the others may need some help, tossing the egg nest to draw the armors away, showing off his findings to the others. Leos explains that the mollusk had acted as muscles for the armor, individually controlling different sections of the armor. And this discovery also explains why the armors were so sporadic, as it was their spawning season, and they were simply fixated on protecting their eggs. Seeing Leos excited, Chilchuck and Marcel know Leos is determined to taste the mollusk, watching as Senshi and Leos discuss ways to prepare the creature. Just to make sure, Senshi removes the mollusk's organs, tossing some of them into a stir-fry of vegetables, whilst others are steamed and placed in some soup. Seeing as they all fear being poisoned, the gang watches Leos takes the first bite, all amazed to hear Leos declare the meal is delicious. Following Leos's lead, the others all try out the meal, all acknowledging that it's edible and has similar taste to mushrooms and shellfish. As the gang cleans up, they all wonder how such creatures evolve and populate, only for Leos to pick up a new prestige-looking sword. As the gang continues deeper through the dungeon, Leos realizes a creature is hiding in his new sword, choosing to conceal his new companion, hiding it from the others. Having made it through most of the third basement floor, the gang enter the Golden Castle, a location once glorious, but now is covered in dust and mold. Using his ears, Leos navigates the maze-like structure, hiding from wandering skeletons and ghouls whilst greeting other adventurers. Hearing a golem nearby, Leos suggests they head elsewhere, all knowing that golems are mud and stone that has been magically shaped and follows their master's orders. As Marcel shoots down Leos's thoughts of consuming a golem, Senshi guides the gang to his campsite, explaining that he normally hunts on the second and fourth floor, visiting the town only when he needs spices. Senshi reveals that golems maintain a great temperature and humility, making the others realize Senshi uses golems as gardens, able to fend off against insects and attackers whilst nurturing any seed planted. Since the third floor has no other good monster to harvest, Senshi only prioritizes golems, entering a secret passage only to whistle to 3 golems. Before the gang can ready their weapons, Senshi dashes forth, easily identifying the golem's core, only to destroy the golems when he removes their core. Seeing so many luscious vegetables appear from what remains of the golems, the gang joyfully take their time harvesting what they need. As for the weeds they plucked, Senshi asks everyone to help him gather them, to wither them, where he'll place them back into the soil to decompose with some fertilizer. Hearing all of this, Marcel realizes what Senshi is doing, stating that Senshi was the one who planted the cores in the golem, reminding Senshi that activating magical creatures without permission is illegal. Senshi brushes off his behavior as simple gardening, grateful that the others are helping him plant new seeds in the soil, but as they take a break, Marcel excuses herself to use the bathroom. Seeing as Marcel is gone, Senshi takes out 3 cores, planting Taro, Jiro, and Saburo into the soil, declaring that it'll take a while before the 3 golems respawn. With Leos inspired by Senshi's dedication to farming, the gang begin preparing the vegetables, prompting Senshi to start a fire. When Marcel offers to use magic to start a fire, Senshi states he needs to constantly practice his skills to ensure he doesn't get rusty, making use of the remainder of the basilisk bacon to craft a hearty vegetable-filled lunch. Leos is curious as to why the vegetables are so sweet, wondering what the remaining 1% of the golem is made of if 99% is made of soil. With Marcel refusing to answer, Senshi heads off to use the bathroom, reminding Marcel that the toilets on their current floor have been conveniently placed near hotspots. Seeing as things are way too convenient for them, the gang rush to confront Senshi, realizing he's been the one keeping the toilets clean, having used the feces and urine collected as fertilizer. Leos asks why Senshi is so dead set on living a life in the dungeon when he could have an easier time on the surface. But Senshi says it's to maintain the dungeon as a whole, revealing that there used to be 10 golems roaming floor 3, but now there is only 3. Senshi states that golems ensure no dangerous creatures from the lower floors climb to the higher floors and disrupt the ecosystem of the dungeon. And by giving back to the dungeon, Senshi can help others as well. Hearing Senshi's story, the gang are worried Senshi's absence will cost the dungeon, but Senshi reassures everyone the golems will take care of things when he's gone. Wrapping things up, the gang head off. The gang note they're carrying extra vegetables with them, wondering if they could exchange them for other goods. Heading to meet with some merchants, but upon greeting the host, The gang are asked to leave when the host hears they want to trade some vegetables. Before the gang are tossed out, the room is overrun with orcs, all slaying the corrupt people in the room, only for an orc to reach out towards Marcel. Before Laos can intervene, Senshi stops him, revealing that the orcs are his clients and friends. The orc is revealed to be Zon, mentioning how the red dragon had appeared and their settlement had been disturbed, forcing the orcs to seek refuge in a higher floor than their usual. As the orcs scour the room, they demand Laos and his party hand over all their resources. But seeing as Senshi is an old friend, the orcs agrees to house them for a night in exchange for the food. Seeing no reason to refuse, Zon takes everyone back to their base, exciting Senshi as he plans to make bread with the jar of yeast they found. Although the gang are annoyed at Senshi's priorities, they quiet down upon entering Zon's camp, all instructed to remain in a cage, all whilst Zon's son gleefully rushes to his dad. With Senshi demanding to have the ingredients to cook some bread, the others help Senshi mix and knead the bread mixture, all whilst Zon's son watches. Zon takes the chance to educate his son, retelling the times when orcs lived on the surface, only for elves and humans to force the orcs to live underground. Hearing Zon insult humans and elves, Marcel fires back by mentioning how barbaric orcs were even when left alone, prompting both Zon and Marcel to help knead some dough, all whilst arguing over which race was in the wrong. Taking a break, Zon asks Laos himself what he thinks of the old man's prophecy, reminding Laos that the person that slays the evil mage will inherit the dungeon. Laos admits he has no aspirations to inherit the dungeon, annoying Zon as he states all adventurers are lazy and greedy, getting into another argument with Marcel. Having let the dough rise, Senshi bakes the dough, revealing a nice golden brown bread. Before the gang can taste the bread, Zon declares the bread to be the orcs' belonging. But suddenly Zon's son asks why Zon is being so mean. Luckily, Marcel covers for Zon, ultimately convincing Zon to share their food with the gang. With everyone sitting down for a meal, Marcel admits the orcs can cook, giving Laos the chance to reveal that his main goal is to slay the red dragon to save his sister. Seeing Laos's determination, Zon divulges that the dragon was seen 2 floors below towards the west, intrigued as Zon wonders if Laos has the makings of a king. As Zon gifts Laos a map, they all enjoy a meal as one, finally bidding the orcs goodbye as they descend further. Following a separate adventurers party, they're seen munching on their final meal before their next dungeon exploration. But suddenly someone calls out to Kabru. The man is surprised Kabru and his party had grown so much, reminding Kabru that many parties have been dismantled and gone missing, asking if Kabru himself will be the one to conquer the dungeon. Flattered, Kabru utters that he's not sure he can achieve such a goal, all whilst Rincha Fana glares at Kabru. Finishing the meal, Rin scolds Kabru for being so humble, having wanted Kabru to yell at the man for living such a mundane life. Although Kabru doesn't disagree, he states they should show what they can do with their actions instead of words, all heading to gather supplies. Having acquired various items along with food and water for 6 people, but are forced to stop hoarding seeing as there isn't enough manpower to carry everything. Mikbel wonders what the lower floors are like, giving Kabru the chance to tease Mikbel. But as we go to several days later, the gang have made it to the 3rd basement floor. Easily slaying the creatures on their floor, Kabru notices a strange air the dungeon is giving off, having heard that the dungeon layout is shifting and monsters are more active than normal. Suddenly hearing Mikbel call out to them. Upon opening a chest they found on a zombie corpse, the gang strike gold, all agreeing to head back to town and cash in. Cutting back to Laos and the gang, they coincidentally run into Kabru and his party all knocked out with their loot scattered everywhere. Seeing no visible injuries, Chilchuck wonders if the gang fought over the loot, all whilst Marcel prays to prevent them from becoming zombies. When Chilchuck reaches for the nearby scattered coins, Laos's sword begins acting sporadically, shaking violently as it beckons Laos to draw it. Abiding the sword's wish, Laos raises his blade towards the coins, forcing the coins to reveal their bug-like structure. With the coins swarming the gang, Marcel notices a centipede appear from the pearls around a knocked-out adventurer's neck, swiftly releasing a stun spell to immobilize everything in her vicinity. Laos is impressed to have run into treasure bugs as it has been ages, but the gang are more curious as to how Laos detected the bug's movements, something Laos can't explain as it was his sword that alerted him. Off to the side, the trio spots Senshi breaking the treasure bugs, sorting them into edible and non-edible, intriguing Laos as he wonders how Senshi can discern the bugs. Senshi points out that bug necklaces have legs between the segments, coin bugs have an insect-like underside, ring bugs have a flexible structure, and tiara bugs float on water. Getting to work, Senshi skewers and grills the necklace bug, stir-fries the coin bugs only to grind and mix the remaining bugs, showing off a variety of bug snacks. As the gang try out the snacks, Laos personally takes a massive bite of the sweet treats, wondering if his sword and the treasure bugs are the same kind. Grabbing a fried coin, Laos confirms that his sword reacted because it was intimidated by the treasure bugs, exciting Laos as he names his new sword Kensuk. Seeing Senshi throw away the non-edible gems, Chilchuk and Marcel realize the inedible gems were actual gems that could be cashed in. Continuing on, Marcel senses a cold, tingling sensation, realizing that a ghost is nearby, due to the abundance of corpses on their floor. Chilchuk wonders why they can't just use magic to remove it, apologizing as he realizes Fallon was only capable of such a thing, something Marcel admits to as well. Seeing as a ghost has appeared behind them, they all begin to sprint, but when Laos drops his bug snack, he stays behind to retrieve it, ultimately caught by the ghost. Being slowly frozen to death, Laos struggles to break free, forcing Marcel to blow away the ghost with a fire spell, but the noise ends up alerting more ghosts to their position. Choosing to flee, Senshi learns that Fallon was an expert when dealing with ghosts, having mastered several advanced spells. Flashing back as we see Fallon casting an anti-ghost spell around their former party, reminding Marcel to never harm ghosts as they don't want the ghost to suffer, something Marcel admired about Fallon. When the former party had encountered the living corpse of a missing adventurer, Fallon courageously leapt into the corpse's arms, forcing the ghost possessing it to leave the corpse alone. With Senshi amazed by this Fallon person, the gang choose to hide in a separate room for now, afraid Marcel would have to cast several explosion spells if the ghost attacked. Luckily, Senshi unveils some items to craft holy water, confusing the trio as to who Senshi is. Senshi recounts that there are many customs and beliefs around the world, some of which include the use of fire to scare away demons, the worship of the golden beetle as it represents the sun god, offerings of alcohol to disinfect things, and salt itself as it cleanses all evil. As Senshi rushes up to finish the holy water, the ghosts all begin peeping into their room, all individually clinging to party members who hopelessly give in. Laos himself begins blaming his weaknesses, having wished for himself to be the one who was eaten, not Fallon. But before Laos can reach out to Fallon, Senshi smacks away the ghost with his makeshift holy water. Putting in the work, Senshi works his way around to all the ghosts, freeing Chilchuk from reuniting with his deceased father. Seeing Senshi miraculously fight off the ghost, Laos instructs the others to not beat themselves up for what happened to Fallon, offering to help swing around Senshi's holy water. Having cleared up all the ghosts, the gang noticed the holy water had been frozen over, opening the jar of holy water only to discover ice cream sorbet had been made. Having resolved the issue at hand, Laos states that if Fallon was here, they probably wouldn't have gotten to enjoy the ice cream. But this only sours the mood. Having been walking for a while, Laos asks if they should rest up before descending into floor 4, reminded that they only have treasure bugs as resources. Moving into a dining room, the gang notice an abundance of paintings but no food, all wishing a hearty meal would appear before them. Out of nowhere, a nearby painting begins to spin, attempting to suck Laos in, but Marcel destroys it before anything happens. Laos scolds Marcel for ruining his fun, stating that if he were sucked into the paintings, he could at least quench his hunger with the food inside. Although the gang think Laos is crazy, they end up tying a rope to him, allowing Laos to get sucked up by one of the paintings. Flung into a new world, Laos is spotted by a maid who mistakes Laos to be a guard, swiftly handing Laos a bowl of fruit as they both rush to serve it to the king and queen. As Laos tries to look for an opening to devour some food, Laos loses his appetite, seeing King Freenag adore his newborn Prince Delgal, along with an elf praising the new prince, signaling for the others to pull him out of the painting. The gang are disappointed to see Laos return with nothing, all searching around for a more casual and fun painting, prompting Laos to leap into a new setting. Having fallen onto the table before a prince, Laos is scolded for ruining the celebration, but is relieved to hear a grown-up Prince Delgal pardon Laos's rude attitude. Now allowed to roam around, Laos reaches for a chicken drumstick, but loses his appetite, once again hearing that the king has been poisoned. Choosing to retrieve some food before he's pulled out, Laos takes note of the same elf from the other painting. But when he returns to the others, he realizes the food has disappeared, only allowed to exist in the paintings. Having had enough, Laos states he'll eat his fill whilst in the paintings, rushing into a banquet seating. Spotting Prince Delgal has inherited the throne, but more importantly, Laos stuffs his face with as much food as possible. Before Laos can leave, the same elf from earlier stops him, demanding to know who Laos is, having remembered Laos from when Prince Delgal was born along with when the king was poisoned. Seeing the elf ignite his armor, Laos signals to be pulled out. Sad to report that an elf has now recognized him, but worst of all, he is still hungry as the food doesn't return with him. Continuing through the floor, the gang arrive at an abandoned kitchen with a water source nearby. Sad they won't reach the 4th floor today. With everyone settling in for the night, Chilchuck catches a glimpse of a chest nearby, deducing that the chest must be a mimic. Choosing to hide the mimic from the others, Chilchuck utters that he has had nothing but trouble with mimics, but the others call him out for acting strange. Chilchuck simply excuses his behavior as him being tired, but is called out by Marcel for always being so secretive, having never told anyone about his age or past. That night, Chilchuck stands guard, completely famished as he chooses to retrieve some water, only to discover a coin insect nearby. Seeing the coin running towards the mimic, Chilchuck rushes after it, accidentally setting off a trap that locks him in the room with the mimic. Seeing no way of opening it from the outside, Chilchuck reasons he shouldn't yell for help as it'll attract monsters, declaring he'll break free from the inside. Upon inspecting the room, Chilchuck is annoyed by the spikes hidden in the floor along with the ancient language on the wall he can't read. Seeing as there are 3 switches in the room he must press, Chilchuck realizes there is a 4th switch near the mimic, choosing to rest for a bit as he racks his brain. Out of nowhere, a pair of claws reach out from Chilchuck's resting spot, forcing Chilchuck to dodge back as he realizes he's been sitting on a mimic. Running for dear life, Chilchuck remembers he can flip a mimic to immobilize it, making use of a spike trap to flip the mimic all while sustaining minimal damage. As for the mimic he swore to avoid, he realizes the chest was empty all along, instead housing a lone insect coin with the same writing as the ancient language. Rushing to decipher the writing, Chilchuck manages to trigger the 4 rooms traps in the correct order, barely escaping the reach of the mimic chasing after him as the mimic is crushed by the gate. With all the commotion, the others awaken to see Chilchuck barely alive, amazed he managed to catch a mimic for their next meal. With Senshi and Laos dead set on eating the mimic, Senshi first dissects and boils the creature, unveiling a freshly steamed mimic, but Laos notes how tough it is to deshell it. As Senshi and Laos force Chilchuck to hand over his lock-picking tools, the gang dine on the fresh mimic, curious as to why Chilchuck kept the mimic a secret from them. Chilchuck states he has had a horrible past dealing with mimics, stressed that the mimic would eat a coin insect he found, but is corrected as Laos states coin insects actually eat mimics. Apparently, the coins crawl into the mimics to lay eggs, allowing the newborns to feast off the mimic, waiting for the day someone discovers them, where the coins can roam free in search of more mimics. Marcel takes the chance to scold Chilchuck for being so secretive, ultimately convincing Chilchuck to reveal he is 29 years old, considered a child by Marcel and Senshi. Following Kabru, we see several older adventurers discovering their party's corpses, swiftly reviving the gang as Rin is shocked they were wiped out. On top of things, the gang realizes their loot and some of their belongings has disappeared, but the old men who revived them hide the fact that it was treasure bugs that attacked them, instead revealing that a different party passed by them. With Rin discovering a strand of hair used to ward off ghosts, Kuro puts his nose to work, sniffing out that an elf, a human, a dwarf, and a half-foot pass by, even having a meal next to their lifeless bodies. Annoyed, Kabru states they'll be chasing after them, tossing the older adventurers a payment. Watching the kids leave only to utter that they kept the treasure bugs a secret to make more cash. Back with Leos and the others, they begin to wash up before heading out, all whilst Marcel remembers her valuable soap bar had been left behind in the dragon's domain. Arriving at the 4th basement floor, the gang make note of the underground lake created from the magic-infused water, giving off a faint glow. Senshi reveals where he personally fishes and sets up traps, but Marcel shows off her magic to walk on water, something that makes Senshi throw a fit. Seeing Senshi flailing around, Leos holds Senshi down, allowing Marcel to cast the water-walking spell on him, asking why Senshi hates magic so much. Senshi states that people become over-reliant on their magic, but as Leos gives Senshi a shove, the gang watches Senshi slowly begins to sink, pulling him out as they wonder why the spell isn't working. Leos realizes Senshi's dirty beard is like an insulator that weakens the spell's effect, giving Senshi the opportunity to show off his method of crossing the lake. Taking out the shell of a mimic, Senshi places it on top of the river, drawing out a majestic-looking kelpie. Although the gang are frightened at first, Senshi reassures them that he's named the kelpie and, having frequently ran into her when he fishes. When Senshi suggests that he ride and steer, and Leos says he's against it, reminding Senshi that kelpies draw people into deep waters with its beauty only to do unspeakable things. Senshi utters that he trusts and, hopping on her back as he begins to ride her, but upon seeing and begin to submerge, Leos ties some rope onto and, diving into the waters to follow the drowning Senshi. At first, Senshi is confused seeing and acting strange, frightened upon seeing and bare her teeth, rushing to clamp onto some mimic shell Senshi is holding. Seeing no other way, Leos wrestles and stabs, and allowing Senshi to follow up. On the surface, Marcel and Chilchuck hurriedly reel in the rope, relieved to see no one is hurt. Senshi realizes and was waiting for him to ride her all along, prompting Leos to remind everyone that monsters are unpredictable, but having mourned enough, Senshi declares he'll personally butcher Anne's body. Coming up with an idea, Marcel asks for some fat, working beside Senshi, but at the same time, Leos points to several objects floating in the distance, asking Chilchuck to help him investigate. Walking on water, Leos and Chilchuck discover the bodies of Kabru and their party, barely recognizing them from earlier. But upon discovering the corpse of a mermaid, Chilchuck deduces that Kabru and his party must have given their lives to slay the monster. At that moment, Chilchuck's eyes become blank, beginning to walk off towards the source of a sound only to be brought back to reality by Leo's clapping sound. Off in the distance, 2 sirens can be seen singing. Noticing Leos and Chilchuck approaching them, they quickly scurry off, frightened by Leos's singing. Choosing to place Kabru and his party's bodies on land, Leos and Chilchuck head to retrieve some scattered grains. But Leos suddenly begins wondering what a mermaid would taste like. Intervening, Chilchuck reminds Leos that a mermaid is a demi-human, creatures that embody humans and monsters. For their particular case, Leos says their mermaid lays eggs, being more monster than human, but Chilchuck still refuses to dine on a human-like creature. Heading back to the others, Leos notices they are still hard at work, choosing to make use of the scattered grains, some mimic meat, and the mermaid's seaweed hair to craft a porridge for the gang. With Marcel digging in, she notices some popping textures in the food, something Leos proudly claims as fish eggs. Pulling Leos aside, Chilchuck realizes Leos had used the mermaid's fish eggs as ingredients, quickly ceasing their conversation upon seeing Marcel checking on them. As some time passes, Marcel presents her soap created from the fat of a kelpie, helping Senshi apply the soap to his dirty beard, only to work tirelessly to comb out wrinkles. With a new and improved fluffy beard, Marcel applies her water-walking spell once more, relieved to see Senshi can now walk on water. As the gang travel across the lake, they encounter various sea creatures, forcing Marcel to cast an explosion spell, but Senshi cries that Marcel killed too many bladefish. Seeing as bladefish can be eaten many ways, warning Marcel that bladefish also serve as a pillar to other sea creatures. But Leos wonders why they haven't encountered any mid-tier monsters yet. Deep within the lake, we see several mermaids swimming to deal with the intruders, only to be captured by several tentacles, forcing the mermaids to swim by Leos and his party. As Senshi feels some rumbling on the surface of the lake, the gang are flung aside as a massive kraken appears, forcing Leos to order Marcel to prepare a spell, all whilst they distract the creature. With the kraken on hot pursuit, Marcel manages to land a direct hit on the creature, but completely unfazed, the kraken begins tangling the boys in its tentacles. Senshi notes how tough the kraken's skin is, choosing to retrieve a mermaid trident, only to ask Marcel to cast another spell for him. With Marcel trusting in Senshi's words, Marcel exposes herself to the kraken, casting water walk on the creature, forcing it out of the lake and onto the surface of the water. Seeing an opening, Senshi rushes in, plunging his trident between the creature's eyes, immediately slaying it as it turns white and loses its red color. Leos realizes the kraken had been devouring the mid-tier monsters, curious as to how the kraken tastes, but Senshi suddenly spots a parasite worming its way out of the kraken. Easily catching and killing it, Senshi begins flaying it, drizzling some sauce on it only to serve some roasted glazed parasite. Wrapping up the meal, the gang spot the kraken being devoured by the smaller fish, something Senshi recognizes as the circle of life, but at the same time Leos begins to quiver, realizing a parasite had entered his stomach, forcing the gang to rest in a nearby room.